The court session began with the prosecutor asking, "You stole $4 million, $4 million, and you thought you could get away with it." The camera pans to the teenagers. They are crying. Parents cover their faces with their hands. Tears fill the courtroom, young faces, eyes downcast. Parents hide their faces as if hoping to wake up from a nightmare, Forbes headlines. Teenagers pull off $4 million crypto heist, Bloomberg writes. The new frontier of financial crime is getting younger, The Guardian adds. America faces a new wave of cybercriminals still in high school. Just an ordinary school chat, a few clicks on the dark web, and suddenly millions of dollars vanish from wallets overnight. In May 2025, the world was shaken by the news that 3 teenagers from Florida were arrested and charged with kidnapping and stealing cryptocurrency worth around $4 million. Teenagers accused of $4 million crypto kidnapping, wrote Reuters and The Guardian, too wild to be true, but this was reality. And the scariest part is this was not some genius hacker attack. No, it all happened the old-fashioned way. Social engineering, manipulation, threats, physical pressure. According to the indictment, the teenagers did not just hack an account. They kidnapped a businessman, drove him into the desert outside Las Vegas, and forced him to give access to his wallets. The FBI later called this one of the most alarming examples of crypto cybercrime involving violence. But let's take it step by step. Who were these teenagers? How did 16-year-old kids end up at the center of one of the most high-profile criminal stories of 2025? And what does it tell us about the future of the crypto market? Some called them victims of society raised in a world of digital illusions. Others called them juvenile geniuses of deception. But the fact remains, they did what only organized crime groups dared to attempt. The indictment names Belal Ashraf and Fletcher, both 16. The third participant remains anonymous, protected by juvenile law. According to AP News, they orchestrated the kidnapping in November 2024. The victim, a businessman from Texas whose name is officially undisclosed, but in court documents is referred to as crypto investor and businessman, attended a private event in Las Vegas focused on NFT and blockchain startups. As he left the venue, he noticed 2 young people approaching him. Within seconds, he was shoved into a car where a third teenager was already sitting. On the road, they spoke calmly. "We know who you are. We know how much money you have. We need your keys." Quote from the victim's testimony in court filings. "And when the businessman tried to resist, one of them pulled a gun. Then came 1 hour of driving along dark Nevada roads, abandoned motels, desert highways, the smell of gasoline and dust. And it was there, under the threat of a weapon, that he handed over passwords to crypto wallets and NFT collections, losses around $4 million. The teenagers left him in the desert. He walked until he found a gas station, called the police. And within hours, the case was in the hands of the FBI and U.S. Secret Service Electronic Crimes Task Force. The crypto world shuddered. This was not just a cyber hack. This was a new form of violence, crypto kidnapping, and as Bloomberg later noted, this reflects a frightening trend. The higher the value of digital assets, the higher the risk of their forcible seizure. But now let's pause and ask, how did 16-year-old teenagers get to this point? Why did children who were sitting in classrooms just months ago end up holding a crypto millionaire businessman at gunpoint? To understand how this story became possible, we need to go back a few years before the kidnapping. Florida, a suburb of Miami, ordinary residential neighborhoods, school campuses, cheap diners where teenagers spent their evenings with soda and burgers. This is where Belal Ashraf and Fletcher grew up. At first glance, they were no different from millions of other teenagers, studying on Zoom during the pandemic, parents trying to make ends meet, endless talks about the future, about money, about how to get out of there. But then there was one twist. They encountered the world of cryptocurrency too early: Reddit, Discord, YouTube. These were their real universities. Instead of homework, they explored forums with names like Our Crypto Moonshots and private trader chats. Instead of school textbooks, they read articles from CoinDesk, watched video reviews on TikTok, screenshots of someone's successful trades. They dreamed of following the path of those Forbes called crypto wunderkinds. Kids who made millions on NFTs and meme coins. Belal Ashraf, according to his police file, was particularly fascinated by social manipulation. The FBI found notes on his phone with titles like Phishing Made Easy, How to SIM Swap in 2024, Human Psychology and Hacking. Fletcher was quieter, technical. He liked to tinker with code, tried mining, and even participated in a school hackathon where his team took second place. The judges noted unconventional thinking. But no one could predict where it would lead. And then there was a third teenager whose name is still hidden due to his status. He acted as a catalyst. According to a Reuters investigation, he found the first victim, a businessman from Texas. He suggested not just hacking, but meeting in person. And from that moment, the story stopped being a game. Here's the paradox. These kids grew up in an era where success was measured by follower count and MetaMask screenshots. For them, cheating did not look like a crime. It looked like skill to bypass the system. They saw stories about OneCoin, FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, and concluded that in the crypto world, everyone deceives someone. Only some become billionaires and others end up in prison, in one of the seized Discord chats published in court documents. Belal wrote, "Why work 9 to 5 when you can just take what's already in the wallet? Teenage bravado." But these words later appeared in federal court as evidence of intent. As the crypto market surged again in 2024, these kids decided their time had come. Bitcoin was approaching $70,000, metaverse tokens were soaring, and everything seemed possible. They were inspired not only by the internet. A witness noted that Ashraf and Fletcher loved watching YouTube documentaries about crypto scams, CoffeeZilla, exposés on Vice. Investigations by The Guardian into cybercriminals. But instead of seeing a warning, they saw instructions, as if a Netflix documentary about criminals became their guide. And that's when the most troubling question arises: was it coincidence or inevitability? They were not the first teenagers captivated by crypto. Back in 2019, The Verge wrote about a teenage mafia engaging in SIM swapping, hijacking phone numbers and crypto wallet access through carriers. In the 2020s, such cases multiplied. In 2022, Canadian police arrested a 17-year-old who stole over $30 million using the same scheme. What Ashraf and Fletcher did looked like a continuation of this chain. But with one critical difference: they went from online to offline. They did what most hackers fear to do. They met the victim face to face. And that's the key moment of their rise, not just teenagers with a computer, but teenagers who decided to play real gangsters, according to the investigation. It was then, in the autumn of 2024, that they began planning the kidnapping, carefully studying the victim's habits. Using OSINT, open source intelligence, social media, conference appearances, public wallet addresses, they knew which day he would be in Las Vegas, which hotel he would stay in. They knew he would be alone. According to the indictment, which became public in May 2025, the preparation for the kidnapping took at least 2 weeks. The teenagers used everything they could find in the public domain. One court document mentioned the term digital surveillance via open source intelligence, which means they were collecting tiny pieces of information. Posts from the victim on Twitter X, his photographs from conferences, geolocation tags on Instagram, even old interviews on YouTube. Gradually, they pieced together a picture: a successful crypto investor who recently sold part of his tokens worth over $5 million was going to an NFT conference in Las Vegas. He would be alone. He had access to several hot wallets. Bloomberg later called this digital stalking taken to the extreme. The teenagers bought a used black sedan, a car no one would notice. They rented a cheap motel outside the city and agreed to meet at the conference center in the evening when the event ended. On the evening of November 14th, the victim left the building. Surveillance cameras captured 2 teenagers approaching him as if they were acquaintances. The next second, they shoved him into the car. A third was inside with a gun. And here's the twist. According to the victim's testimony published by AP News, the teenagers spoke calmly, even coldly. "We do not want to hurt you, we only need the keys, do it fast, and you go home alive." They drove him through dark roads outside Las Vegas for about 1 hour. The victim recalled, "I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a child's eyes. He was no older than my younger brother, and that child was holding a gun." They arrived in an abandoned area near Henderson. In an old warehouse, the teenagers forced him to open his laptop, connect to the internet, and hand over seed phrases. The FBI later confirmed that from one wallet about $3.2 million in Ethereum and about $800,000 in NFT collections were transferred. All transactions were completed in a matter of minutes. It looked like they had practiced many times. Once the money was in their hands, the teenagers made a decision that later became key in the charges. They left the victim in the desert, without a car, without a phone, without water. He walked for about 40 minutes until he found a 24-hour gas station. There he called the police, and within 2 hours, FBI and U.S. Secret Service Electronic Crimes Task Force officers arrived. From that moment, the investigation began, which journalists compared to a digital hunt. Investigators followed the transactions. They tracked fund transfers using blockchain analytics, tools from companies like Chainalysis. The money moved through mixers, anonymous wallets, exchanges. But the teenagers made a mistake. Part of the funds was sent to an account linked to a real phone number, and that number was registered to Belal Ashraf. Within 2 weeks, the teenagers were arrested. During searches, authorities found weapons, laptops, and phones with Discord chats where the kidnapping details were discussed. Bring duct tape. Make him talk. Do not forget the cold wallet. These chats became direct proof of intent. They planned the kidnapping with the same cold logic a trader plans a deal. Wrote the Financial Times, but the main question is what drove them. Was it greed, teenage bravado, or the illusion that in the crypto world everything is possible and there would be no punishment? They believed the money could not be traced, that cryptocurrency is anonymous, that the blockchain is their ally. But as the FBI representative noted in an interview with The Guardian, blockchain never forgets. December 2024, Florida, early morning, on a quiet street where normally only school buses and barking dogs are heard. Suddenly, several black SUVs appear. FBI agents took less than a minute to break into the Ashraf family home. In the bedroom, among posters of rap artists and computer parts, they found 16-year-old Belal. His laptop was still on, Discord open with a chat discussing crypto schemes. It looked like he had just stepped away from a game. The FBI agent later told Reuters, across town at the Fletcher family home, the scene was almost identical. Parents in complete shock watched their son being led out in handcuffs. On the kitchen table, school textbooks were scattered with printouts from crypto forums. The third teenager, a key figure, was by then outside the United States. His name is protected by law. But according to Bloomberg, he had gone to relatives in Canada. U.S. authorities had already sent an extradition request. For the parents, this was a world-shattering blow. We did not know he was into crypto. He was a quiet child, always at the computer. We thought games, YouTube. But not this. His school environment reacted immediately. Some said Belal and Austin were geeks, but not aggressive. Others remembered strange talks about easy money and a world where rich people are at fault if cheated. Teachers described them as ordinary teenagers with a strong pull toward technology. But none of that mattered anymore. 22 criminal charges, kidnapping, extortion, theft, illegal use of firearms, court documents published by The Guardian read like a crime thriller. The FBI at a press briefing called the case one of the most disturbing in recent years. This is a new frontier of crime, not just hacking but physical kidnapping for digital assets. At the first hearings in January 2025, prosecutors detailed the scheme. They showed chats, transaction printouts, surveillance footage near the conference center. Journalists from Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CoinDesk were present. Their headlines the next day were stark: crypto's dark side. Teenagers held investor hostage. FBI uncovers $4 million crypto kidnapping scheme by high school students from Discord to desert. Teen plot ends in federal court. One of the most dramatic moments came when the victim's words were read. He spoke about looking into the eyes of a teenager holding a gun. I saw a child, but in that moment that child was ready to kill me for a password. In court, the teenagers behaved differently. Belal boldly, almost defiantly. Austin subdued, looking at the floor. Lawyers tried to build a defense. They are minors, they did not understand the full weight of their actions. But prosecutors insisted. Age does not remove responsibility. They planned a kidnapping with weapons. They knew what they were doing. This is not a mistake, this is a conscious choice. Meanwhile, the media machine started turning. TV shows, podcasts, YouTube exposés all discussed the case of the high school crypto kidnappers. Some saw this as an example of youth decay raised on TikTok and the illusion of easy money. Others pointed to a systemic problem. Teenagers grow up in a world where crypto scammers become billionaires and heroes on Forbes covers. May 2025, the District Court of Las Vegas. The courtroom is full of journalists, cameras, and spectators allowed only partially. The atmosphere is like a loud premiere. But this is not a movie. This is where the fate of 3 16-year-old teenagers is decided. The defendant's bench, Belal Ashraf in a sharp suit sits straight, but his eyes show fear. Austin Fletcher looks down, avoiding the press. The third teenager, arrested in Canada, is handled separately. The judge opens the session. The first thing read aloud is the list of charges: kidnapping, extortion, grand theft, illegal use of a firearm. The room is tense and silent. The prosecutor begins. They planned this crime with precision. They used a gun. They left a man in the desert. This is not a prank. This is not childish curiosity. This is a violent crime. The teenagers. Lawyers respond with another strategy. These are children, products of a digital age. They were seduced by the illusion of crypto wealth. By a culture that glorifies fraud, they did not understand the weight of their actions. At one point, the victim is given the floor. The man stands, his voice trembling. I looked into the eyes of a child, but he had a gun pointed at me. I thought I would die that night. No one should ever go through this, not in a civilized country. Journalists from The Guardian wrote that many in the room could not hold back their emotions. Some wiped tears. One of the teenagers' parents began quietly sobbing. The strongest words came from Fletcher's mother. She pleaded with the judge to consider her son's age. He is just a boy, he made a mistake, please don't let his whole life end here. But the prosecution was relentless. Prosecutors referred to precedents. If teenagers are tried as adults for digital fraud, then for kidnapping with a weapon it is even more so. After several hours of deliberation, the judge returns. Silence. Everyone stands. The verdict. Belal, Ashraf, and Austin Fletcher found guilty on most counts. Since they are under 18, the final sentence will be set in the juvenile system, but with the possibility of review at adulthood, the maximum they face is up to 20 years in prison, part of which may be reconsidered depending on behavior. The courtroom reacts strongly. Journalists immediately rush to their phones. Teen kidnappers face 20 years over $4 million crypto heist, reads the Reuters headline an hour later. Justice served in crypto kidnapping case, adds Bloomberg. The teenagers, lawyers said they will appeal. We believe the system failed to consider the psychological immaturity of our clients. They said in an interview with the New York Times, public opinion is harsh on social media, people argue. Some say the punishment is excessive for 16-year-olds. Others write if they are old enough to plan a kidnapping. They are old enough to face the consequences. The victim after the verdict says briefly, I can sleep now, but I will never forget that night. The trial ended, the teenagers were taken to a detention center, cameras turned off, and news feeds changed headlines. But outside the courtroom, one question remains. What does this mean for us? A society where children become cybercriminals for quick millions. Psychologists interviewed by The Guardian noted these are not monsters. These are children shaped by an era that glorifies wealth without effort. We live in a culture where Instagram and TikTok are filled with stories of easy millions. And cryptocurrencies have become symbols of freedom and fast success. For Generation Z, money is no longer associated with labor or time. It is linked to a screen, a password, a wallet. When teenagers see bloggers making videos about 10x on Bitcoin or easy get-rich schemes, they start to believe reality works by the same rules. And somewhere along the way, the line between fantasy and crime disappears. The New York Times journalist wrote the most chilling part is not the gun, but the age. 16-year-olds raised on crypto memes were ready to take a life for tokens on a blockchain. This case became a symbol of a clash between two worlds. The old world where values were defined by work and time, and the new world where digital codes and avatars can be worth more than a house or a life. But let us think. Are the teenagers the only ones to blame? Yes, they took up weapons. Yes, they carried out a kidnapping. But did we adults not create a world where money became a game and fraud became content? Netflix in its documentary investigations often asks viewers, where does personal responsibility end and collective guilt begin? If a 16-year-old boy believes a crypto heist is just another video game, maybe it is not only his mistake. Maybe it is a mirror of our time. The victim said in a post-trial interview, I saw fear in his eyes. Not hate, not anger, fear. As if he himself did not understand what he was doing. And so we are left with a question the court will not answer. You can imprison the teenagers, you can freeze their crypto wallets. You can even ban TikTok and YouTube. But will this change the culture where youth seek not meaning, but shortcuts to success? Or tomorrow, new teenagers in another city, another country, will pick up a phone, open a crypto wallet, and decide they will get lucky too. The outcome of this story is not in court. The outcome is within ourselves. What do we value? What do we pass on to children? Are we creating a generation of builders, or a generation of players willing to stake someone else's life for digital coins?